Can you hear me now, Steve? Okay, we're good. All right. So let me start all of that over since you couldn't hear me. uh, so in June, as well as the 5e homebrew stream for Artena that I'm doing, uh, we are doing a Cyberpunk game that will be starting I said a week from tomorrow when I first said it, and that's how tired I am because it's going to be a week, a month. Words are hard. A month from this Friday, I believe, is roughly when it's going to be starting. Believe the 17th. Yes. Okay. Yes. 6/17. She has the calendar in front of her. And I'm doing a little bit of homebrew with this as well. It's nowhere near as extensive as what I'm doing with Artena, but Night City is still, Night City. It's still out there. Everything is still the same, but I am creating my own city that is in the northeast of the country. So I've like New York, Detroit, Michigan area. The corporations came in and basically bought up the city from smaller corporations. And then I just looked over and saw Cat's chat. Sorry. So I'm thinking that the Detroit area with how all of the factory space and all that is, I think it makes sense that it's going to be kind of in that area. But the corporations came in. There was some smaller corporations that had laid some of the groundwork for what's going on here. But the city name is Somnum Exteri. I'm probably thinking it's going to be Militech that goes in first. And starts buying up and has the idea to turn it into a corporation-based city where that's the main point of it, I guess, in the beginning. And then as it happens, more things come in. And I have started working on it. It is a 5-level system. So the for the very bottom level is actually underground. And as you walk down, there's stairs in each of the corners that take you down. And each of these levels is like huge. It's going to be a huge city for them to explore and play in. But the bottom level is Ignotus, unknown in Latin. Whichever company comes in first, their naming conventions lean towards Latin. Somnum Exteri is nightmare in Latin, and they kind of came in thinking, yes, we're going to build this to scare people kind of thing, which I love to scare people in my games, and so I'm excited for that. But there's, for Ignotus, this is the only part of the map that I've done yet, but it's a huge, basically underground, hey, hush you, prison. And there's walkways around the edges, but then it's a couple 1,000 feet deep water area. It's not like an ocean, probably the Great Lakes. I'm exaggerating a bit on how deep it can go, but it's my world, so I can do what I want. But they keep the prisoners. The only way to get out to the cells is by boat. And the boats are kept basically in really locked cages so that not just anybody can wander down and take them, but there are checks on the way down to kind of stop that. So the cells, they're like 1 mile square floating islands that are kind of all in a line, and there's probably about 10 to 15 of these. It's, like I said, huge. And they're open platforms. There's no sides to them, no top. It's completely open to the elements, and to keep them from swimming and escaping, the water is filled with deadly creatures. So, you'll get your sharks, your giant squids, and when there's fights that inevitably break out, they just throw the bodies in, which just keeps the deadly creatures coming back more and more. Also, down here is where the people that really don't want to be under the corporation's thumb, but still want to be in the city come to. And there's a larger floating platform in the middle that has, sides built up. It's got safety nets in place, kind of thing, uh, where it's basically its own kind of city within a city. And I mean, it's not great living. The only food and stuff that they get is whatever the guards bring out to them and trade with them. But they've got their own kind of society going on down there, and they've figured out how to grow some of their own foods and whatnot. And you'll find all mill run of the mill kind of people, various factions have, kind of set up down here. But I like the idea of this is the prison is basically where people are taken to be forgotten. Or if you're going down to the city, you're going down to that to be forgotten in the above levels. Um is there anything I missed on what I was doing here? Oh, the floating city is called Firidamu, freedom in Japanese, because the first group of people that came down here and decided this was how they were going to live, uh, are in the Japanese persuasion of like I, I wow, words are really hard for me tonight, and I'm not sure why. Uh, I see it as a disgraced exec from the Arasaka, that's how you say that, company that decided, you know what? No, I'm actually not okay with what we're doing anymore, and I want to go and do my own thing. And they came down here and started that. And it's kind of got a festive feel to the town, and it can be seen from the cells. And so, these prisoners also have that added level of seeing this area full of life from a distance, um, to kind of reinforce how alone they are, even with other prisoners. So that's going to be a very fun place to take my players through. The second level, Ignis, this is the ground level. This is going to be where most of the street equivalent in Night City people live and work. It's the hottest area. That's why it's named Ignis. This is where all the boilers and machinery that run the upper levels is at. This is where you'll find the back alley fixers, the back alley med techs, where the nomads will roll into town. It's got a very there's lots of food trucks that roll around, and this area has a little bit more of that kind of Fifth Element feel with the restaurant comes to you kind of thing. The apartment buildings are actually built into the pillars that support the upper levels. It's, like any other, like on the street in Night City, they're small and packed tight with many people cramming into them. And it's not great, but it's better than actually being down on the ground. But there are giant pillars that support the size, the skyscrapers, the bridges, and everything else for the levels above that. So this is very much the uh, cutthroat area of the city. And then we have Susurar. Yes, food trucks are life. I love food trucks. There is also going to be I haven't decided if it's going to be a corporation or if it's going to be an actual just like some of the food trucks, and maybe the food trucks are slightly like Transformers, because in asking for help with naming things, the 8-year-old in the house gave me Chapultron. And that is very much going to be something in this world, and I'm excited for it. So the third level, kind of the middle level, this one I haven't actually fleshed out as much as the others. It's still kind of a question mark, even to me. Like, I kind of have a vague idea of where I want to go with it. But for right now, it's question marks because I don't really know. Food truck war. Oh, oh. Battle bots meet food trucks. I'm in. This might be a show. Here, let me make a note. But yeah, so Susurrar whisper in Latin, it's probably going to be something that has to do with a clandestine group that works out of there and it's somehow cut off. And that's where the name came from. But I'll figure that out later because right now I don't really know. So the fourth level, Tempestus, this is very much open air. There are roads, but it's all like bridges, and you kind of like a lot of what is traversable is inside the buildings. And so this is where the skyscrapers really start coming into play. Um there's platforms for areas. This is kind of like when you played, if anybody played Cyberpunk 2077, like how they had the lower levels of skyscrapers and stuff, and where you could run around and go and check out various things. So it's still got like the elevators to different levels. This is where the lower level corporate workers live. So it's still packed tight, but not as tightly as it is down in Ignis. Uh, they call it Tempestus and Storm because when the wind picks up and there's rain, it's kind of a bitch to be out on those bridges and roads at all. But it's, where the chrome and glass really start and where they've, started to keep it cleaner and that kind of thing. There's still, the med techs, the fixers, more of the net runners are going to be on this level. Yeah, a lot of them will be down in Ignis for various things, but you'll find more of them up here in where there's, a better structure for net running in general. And you're more likely to find the rigs and stuff to uh get into the corporate areas. I really hate when it underlines things in red, and so I always rename them or add to dictionary because yes, I made these words up, but I'm using them. um, this is also, I feel, where a lot of the corporations that were taken over and absorbed, like this is where any of the workers that were kind of grandfathered in go to. So in one of the backstories, well, technically two, with our plotters and planners over here, they actually have part of it is that their family's corporation was bought up by a bigger corporation, and that's caused them no end of grief. And so that's kind of where I got the idea that the city was where other corporations had come in to try and maybe not necessarily rival the big corporations, but at least get a foothold. And then as soon as they got that foothold and started building this city, the bigger corporations were like, huh, we don't like that. And they came in and took over. And then since, you know, it was a work in progress, they got themselves even more ingrained into this city than they might be in some others. Uh, so this will still have, my God, I didn't capitalize it. Oh no. And of course, these ones will be more expensive and, you know, better at their jobs. Have access to, you know, the higher grade materials. But so basically, Ignis and Tempestus is the levels where we'll see the most action, at least in the beginning of the game, based on who's doing what. We've got we've actually, how it's looking so far, we've got a good group, a good mix of what people are doing. We've got a net runner, a solo, a med tech, an exec, and we have a fifth player that's going to be kind of in and out based on schedule. And I don't know exactly what they're doing yet, but I like their style, so I think we'll actually have something pretty cool. Yes, Kat is the net runner. And she printed out the entire section on it because holy crap, there's so much on net runners. But this is where it starts to get into the like futuristic look of the city. It's got the mid-level skyscrapers and like the bridges and the roads. What there is, it's like they're connected to the buildings, and like the bridges go through the buildings. Like there's a main thoroughfare, which is basically just a giant circle it goes in, and it just like the bridge just goes through all of the major skyscrapers to have that access route. And then there's other skyscrapers that are in the middle as well that have offshoots. uh this is also going to be an area where it's a little bit easier to lose people because it's got uh elevator platforms and different things that just make it easier to escape without completely dying. Oh, I did not bring up my chat. Sorry. Let me get that out of the way. uh yeah, this one's a pretty simple, like explaining how it's going to be. There's a lot more that's going to go into it. This is going to be where we run into more of the corporations and what they're getting into. Um, this also is probably where the higher level mob people will be. Like they've got, you know, their minions and shit down on Ignis doing things, but the higher level mob bosses will absolutely live up here, and if you've got to get to them, that's where those will be, where they will be. So it's kind of like, while it's the second level to the top, it's the biggest melting pot of people, and it's got that juxtaposition that the rest of the city doesn't really have. So it's still got like the shady areas, but it's still bright and shiny, like how the corporations want it to look. They do have so that any visiting um execs or anything like that, any important visitors, even if they drive up and look like they would come into Ignis, there's like a area outside where they have like a parking garage almost like structure, and then it has tunnels and elevators and stuff that get them up to the Tempestus level without having to dirty themselves with the lower masses. And there's absolutely thousands and thousands of stairs in this place. There's elevators you can use, but for those that can't pay to use the elevators because it's on like you have to have the money to be able to go where you want to go if you want to take the elevators. And so it's very much a class-based kind of system that happens here, which, you know, is a very cyberpunk thing to have happen. So melting pot, but prettier than Ignis. Then Invicta, the top level. Of course, you know, these corporations all think that they're invisible. So they named the level where they live and work Invincible. Because they're a lot of them are convinced they can't be touched. And it's a little bit harder to get up here. Like there are some stairs that lead up to it, but it's not like any of the other levels where there's multiple sets of the stairs. It's mostly elevators that get you up to this level, and any stairs that are available are heavily guarded. So this is a very much like a city built on pillars, and I imagine that it's like there's almost a floor to a lot of the levels that or at least once we get to Tempestus, where there's kind of a sturdy floor that's been built that then skyscrapers are built on top of that. And this is also where you start to see more of the Japanese influence in the pagoda style buildings, reaching up to the sky. And like they get way fancier with the aesthetic up here. And this is where they put all of the money to impress people. And this is what you can see from miles and miles away when you're coming up to it is, yeah, you can see a little bit of what happens with Tempestus and Susurar and Ignis, but for the most part, it's almost like this floating building that, or this floating city that reaches up out of the the ground basically. So it floats on the pillars, and then that's where it starts to get all of the big buildings, all of the fancy buildings, and what you can see when you come up to it. So if you're a nomad, you're not going to get lost for easily hundreds of miles around this area because each level it's built almost on a rectangle, and it's about, oh wait, haha, I have the art for it right here. So I have my dimensions. So far for work on the map, stay. I have Ignotus drawn out. So this is how the first level looks. That's the underwater or the underground with lots of water prison, and with the city in the center, and then it's got all of the cells. So the long side of it is 20 miles, and then the short side is 10 miles. So this is each level is this. The upper levels probably shrink in a little bit, so that the pillars can better support it. But once I draw that and get a feel for it, I'll have that better figured out. But then each level is easily about, I would say, about 20 stories. Because, this is fiction. I can make it as big as I want and say, hey, they figured out how to make it stay like that. So there's a lot of area to spread out and up in ways that I find really interesting. And it's totally that city that was built to say, hey, eventually we're going to have flying cars. So they're, looking to the future for that. And the setup, I did fully steal the whole levels and eventually flying cars city idea from Fifth Element. It's one of my favorite movies, and I am unashamed to say that I did that. I didn't turn on my fan. My computer's getting hot, sorry. So I'll definitely flesh all of this out better and more, like I always do. I haven't really looked too far into NPCs or anything for it yet. I've got some that have been created with character backstory. I have some ideas for what I'm going to have for them, but I've been spending more time on Artena for sure, since that's coming up faster. And hey, let's do 2 homebrew kind of streams starting the same month. Yes, absolutely. Fifth Element and Blade Runner influence on this. I mean, like any good cyberpunk would be. It's going to be fun to have them explore the different levels and see how they work, which, I can come up with later. But it gives me a lot of room to play with the NPCs too. Like, some of my characters may be more familiar with the Tempestus level than they are with Ignis, and others may have never actually gone higher than Ignis because they didn't have a reason to until everything starts happening. But it's definitely one of those, these smaller corporations are like, hey. Yes, the toys are always amazing. Yes, the Blade Runner Kickstarter, that game looks amazing. There's a lot of good Kickstarter games coming out. I've got Emerald Templars backed, uh, which I think is going to be really awesome. There's actually a lot of TTRPG streamers that have been brought on as writers for it, and it's going to be a really cool amalgamation of art and stuff. And I just love that TTRPGs are so big right now, and such a thing that we can do this, where we'll have, a show every weeknight by July, and have people that actually want to watch it and come and see and are like, oh, hey, this is actually really nifty. We like these people. But I really wanted to do the Cyberpunk campaign, and have that juxtaposition with all of the fantasy that we're going to have. And I love D&D. I love 5e. It's a great thing, and I'm excited I get to play in a couple of the games on here as well. Uh, but it's nice to have something different with it. There is also, because I've got some cyberpunk influences in a TTRPG I'm writing, there's a couple of mechanics that I plan to test in playing this game that will be for that down the road. So we've got parkour game Mirror's Edge. That sounds interesting. uh it's very much going to be, let's just jump in and have fun with the sci-fi side of things. And the mechanics I want to test, the main one that has me really excited is actually adding in, I'm basing it off of tech that they've already got in here for testing how the mechanics going to work. But I think it's a really cool idea for the characters, if their character does die, and then for a way for them to kind of intermingle their first character and the character that they get to come out with. I'm not going to give too much more away about it from that, and if it comes up, it comes up. If not, then you'll get to see it when I come out with a TTRPG. But you know, gotta get the stuff with the channel better laid out before I dive too deep into that. But I love that I get to have the crazy NPCs in this one. And I found a great, like, they do have an actual companion app for Cyberpunk Red that you can completely create your characters in it, and you can import, if you're the DM, you can, or the GM, you can import your players' characters, and it'll set up encounters and it'll set up initiative for you, so you have less to keep track of, which I'm super excited to have. Because you know, that's one of the things that takes up the most time, that kind of gives you a little bit of dead air, is getting that stuff figured out and be like, wait, is this, wait, what? So I like things that try and help make my life easier. um Otherwise, I haven't jumped too deep into other creation of this so far. So what are, like, since I do have some people sitting in here and chatting, what are some things that you would like to see out of a cyberpunk campaign? Since from what I can tell, there's not a whole lot that have been going as a live stream. Explosions, yes. Well, obviously. We also, you know, have lots of shiny metal objects that get to cut people, that are attached to people. um but I'm, you know what, I'm gonna totally kind of flesh out a little bit this game show that is food truck battle bots. Transhumanism, yes, that's a huge thing in cyberpunk. And at least one of my players is like, so my character's probably way more tech than human at this point. All right. Food truck wars. I'll come up with a better name for it at some other point. So this probably will be something that just is like kind of mentioned in game, and I can totally see like coming up with some side like side bits where we can just throw it in on break or something, where it's like I'd use a voice mod and make it like I'm doing commentary for a food truck wars show, because I kind of like that idea. Tricked out. Ooh. Iron Battle Bot Chef Fighting Championship. So a show where tricked out food trucks fight each other while the cooks prepare food to be in a taste test battle. What do you think's for a name? This will be where we'll have Chipotron. It'll be a Mexican food truck that is, also a battle bot. So yeah, I picture it like, oh, I'm all in for this now. I doubt that we'd ever be able to, maybe far down the road we can have like short animated things released where we get somebody that will animate this and then I can do commentary over it. But for now, that is kind of a cool thing. 5-ton steel burrito. Yeah, have net running battle at the same time. Uh yeah, there's so many things that you can kind of fold into it. Net runners battling to get into systems and sabotage. So it's like a team. Like you've got the people that are driving the food trucks. So it's also like it's battle bots, it's demolition derby, it's Iron Chef, it's hackers. Oh man, I might have to on a break do like just an entire show that is my players acting as each one plays each member of a team that is and that has one of these. Oh, so many ideas now. Got to name the show, name the trucks. I imagine it's also like those cooking shows where it's like, all right, we've put these 5 ingredients that you have to use in your truck, and you have to make a dish based off of this. And then, they're going to get sideswiped while they're trying to put in spice. And then, oh, oops, that's a lot of spice. Oh, well. Twisted Metal. I love that game. This is totally just going to be something that is barely ever mentioned, but I'm going to put so much time into. Ooh, Kat, you could be my secondary commentator and we can do voice mods and commentate what one of these shows would be like and how that's our break. Oh. Then instead of, the break screen and people, not having anything to listen to, you get us being crazy and commentating whatever the hell this is. I'll be here for this. Oh man. Okay. So we've got that idea. That's going to be so much fun. Holy crap. Um, I'm going to have to thank Cat's kid Xander for starting this craziness. Honestly, one of the greatest things about doing these kinds of things is if I get stuck on something, I just look at one of the kids and I'm like, hey, what do I name this? What should this be? And then they throw out the most random shit at me. And sometimes something sticks. Oh man. Now I've got to come up with my commentator persona too. Oh. But anyways, so other things that I plan to do with this game, it's definitely going to be, a cyberpunk game. Uh but I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, but there could be some interesting things that happen and change the game when we get to the end of the first season. We'll see how things are going and pick it up from there. But I feel like that this is a bigger sandbox to play in with just how wild and crazy you can get with things. Like there's also definitely an Alita Battle Angel feel to a lot of this. And there's probably a game show for people that are all meched up or not meched up, cybered up too, where they get out there and battle Alita Battle Angel style. Oh man. I also love that it has in the PDFs, if you get it through Drive Through RPG, they've got PDFs for Elf Lines Online. So it's an MMO that the characters can play. So like if one of them is like deep into this, we can have NPCs that are NPCs in the game, or that are PCs in the game, that then they meet them in real life and they're like all secretive about, oh yes, I play this too, this is who I play. And it's a little more reality bending of what we already know, of what we already do. But I'm excited to test out and flesh out how things go, because I also feel like there's going to be probably on the Tempestus level, like an amusement park kind of thing going on. um there's not really a suburban area around this at all. I feel like the suburbs would be little things that happen on the Tempestus level, like where they've got, but it's mostly just like bigger apartments. It's definitely more of a skyscraper city. It's not something that spreads out. It's not something like Night City where it's got the suburbs and it's got, it doesn't have the bay areas since it's not on the actual ocean. Like I imagine that it is close to one of the Great Lakes because of the underwater prison bit. But like there's still like the areas around it, you've got the feel of like the Badlands around Night City, but it's sometimes you have to battle snow out there. And uh like I think that there will be yes, the netrunners can get into elf lines so easily, I assume, and just make shit go wild, and that's always fun. uh and there's definitely like little towns and like little settlements that have set up in the area around it, where the nomads kind of, they're like, yeah, no, we'll go into town to do business, but we ain't staying here. They like the open area, and like they still definitely go into the Detroit area, and Detroit is still a thing, and it's an area that they can go and find the old factories and get scrap and stuff like that and bring it in for the fixers and that kind of thing. But I'm super excited for how this is going, how it's building. I haven't, like I said, I haven't dug too far into it. I did want to at least get a little bit of the Cyberpunk stuff going on stream and show everybody what I'm doing with it, to give the players a little bit more of an idea of where they're going with it. But I don't think I have a terrible much more planned out on this yet. Let me look over here. And there will still be some of like in the PDF, the power players that are in Night City that'll come into play over here. And the gangs will translate, because that's something that's not exclusive to any one place, and that's something where gang gang things kind of spread, and there are the mobs, and they all have connections in the various places. And I do want to bring in some of the cool NPCs that were already created for the game to come in and impart information and show up to kind of like, maybe Johnny Silverhand shows up and everybody goes crazy and there's a show, kind of thing. And that's a distraction for something else. So there'll still be a lot that I pull from the books, but I'm I I like to create my own sandbox to play in and not just play in other people's, and that's why I've run one module once, and that was the Feywild module that I ran on stream. Oh, haha, ha. No Silverhand. I have not read far enough into the story parts of the book for that. There's just so much happening. Uh but I am super excited to create some NPCs that will be like, Silverhand, that are the big rockers and stuff, and get some of that. I definitely need to dig deeper into the book, obviously, if I don't know what the story is, and if I'm going to steal from the story, I need to know the story. But I'm super excited to build the city and have characters be thrown into it to play in it, and for you all to get to witness the absolute chaos this game is going to be, because I kind of feel like this is going to be the most chaotic game on the channel. It's just that kind of game. But I think that the next Chaos Curiosities in 2 weeks, I am going to jump in with some Skag is biased since he's playing in Artena. Manchun? I don't know what Manchun is. You might have to send me something on that, Skag. But I think that the next Cyber Curiosities, Chaos Curiosities, I'll work on some of the NPCs that I want to create for it, and some of the characters that uh the players' characters would know, and like some of the fixers that they would go to for things, and some of the food truck drivers, because that the players will be knee deep in all of that. But I'm super excited to play this game. I'm super excited for the characters that I've seen so far. I'm super excited for you all to come and see what we create in this world, because one of my favorite parts about TTRPGs is the collaborative story and how they're going to change all of the shit that I threw in here. So thanks for coming out. We will see you Thursday night for Spellburn Earth. That's the only other thing we have this week on our channel. Things will start ramping up in June for sure. You can still find me Saturday night on Exquisite Corpse Presents, where I'm not sure what exactly is going to be going on this weekend, but a week from this Saturday, we're actually doing a gala, and we're all going to get fancy and cosplay, and I'm super excited for that. And there's lots of cool stuff happening with a lot of the projects I'm working on, but a lot of them are also wrapping up. I think we've only got one, maybe two, where I play over on Ladies of D&D with the 12 Occult Eye. This week, I wrap up working with Game Night Heroes and Kevin for the Everyday Heroes playtest that we've been running. Those will be coming out. He's also got the Lady Blackbird that I was part of. That'll be coming out soon on Game Night Heroes. And then once we hit June, a lot of what I'm doing is going to be exclusive to the channel, but we will have a couple different variations on 5e homebrew happening on the channel. We'll have the Cyberpunk. We'll still be doing Curiosities and commentary and all of that chaos. So I look forward to everything that we've got coming and everything that other people. Oh yes, Vason. Yes, next week we do have Vason. Um, we've got one more episode of Vason, and then we've got 2 more of Spellburn Earth before. No, Vason. The 3rd episode of Vason was this week. Was it only the 2nd? I don't know. Time is a weird soup. But thanks for coming out. That's all I've got for you today, and we'll see you soon.